So it's been a couple weeks since we looked at these soybeans, and we see they've grown quite a bit. We're down here actually in the canopy looking at these soybean plants, and we see a couple of things going on that should be discussed. One, if we take a look at a normal soybean plant here, we actually can still see, if you take a look at this one, we still can see the cotyledons beginning to fall off of those soybean plants, and we will see those interspersed throughout the field. We begin to lose those for the last week and a half. So we have those laying in the field. That's a normal function of the plant. Once we've used all the resources of those cotyledons, we will start to see them drop off and decay. So when we take a look at a soybean plant that has had the cotyledons drop off, we can still see that we have that leaf scar of those cotyledons here. About last time is where we were looking at this unifoliate leaf, or this leaf that only has one leaflet to it. From then on, we will develop these trifoliate leaves, and this is what a traditional soybean plant looks like. It's got 3 leaflets within a leaf. This whole part is considered the leaf of the plant, and we have 3 leaflets, 1 at the terminal and then 2 as an opposite just below that terminal leaf. And so when we look at maturity and looking at the development of that soybean plant, we are counting these leaflets, or counting these leaves, these trifoliate leaves, to determine how far that soybean plant has developed. So we have the V1 or the VE associated with those cotyledons coming out, and then we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, 4, 5 fully developed leaves, those trifoliate leaves. We have a 6th leaf that is starting to develop here, but it is not fully expanded. And then we have our 7th here right at the terminal, as well as an 8th. So we have a couple of different soybean leaves still to go. But what we do see here is we see that these buds that are right at the base of all of our leaves are starting to develop. And this is where our flowers will more than likely start to develop. These flowers, which will eventually turn into pods of the plant, are starting to kind of grow, differentiate, and turn into those individual structures. So here we are, July 1st. We typically see a flowering begin shortly after the longest day of the year, which is that summer solstice. And so these soybean plants, a little bit behind, but kind of right on track to kind of meet that traditional growth pattern that we see with a soybean plant. Now, we have to talk about the different growth patterns of soybean. And in Oklahoma, we are blessed, if you will, or lucky to be able to take advantage of the 2 different growth patterns that we have in soybeans, these being indeterminate and determinate. Indeterminate soybeans mean that we continue to vegetatively grow, and sometimes very significantly after we've started putting on flowers. So this is our group 4s, our group 3s. These have those indeterminate patterns. We actually have some of our group 5s, which are traditionally determinate, but they still have some indeterminate growth, so they will put on a varying degree of vegetative tissue after we've started flowering. On the other hand, a true determinate, what we will see is that they will stop growing vertically, stop putting on additional leaves, and we'll only see the additional growth vegetatively come from branches once we put on our first flower. Most of ours soybean varieties are a mix of that indeterminate and determinate nature, with a lot of them holding a lot of those indeterminate features, or that ability to continue to grow once we've started putting on flowers. And that can be quite beneficial for us, especially when we have our later planted, these double crop or late season June planted soybean, because we continue to want to get that vegetative tissue out, because these little satellite dishes are what's going to capture that sunlight and turn that into viable plant structures and energy, if you will. So we have this normal plant continuing to develop. We actually do see that it has lost one leaflet, or one terminal leaf here, probably because of deer damage. That's okay. We have a lot of other vegetative tissue. It's got a lot of other tissue going. Losing a little bit of vegetative tissue is typically non-yield limiting, and we will see that plant continue to grow without any significant issue. Now, if we have a major outbreak of things like caterpillars, loopers, blister beetles that are going to take a significant amount of our vegetative tissue out, that's something that we want to control. But losing one leaflet due to insect pressure, deer pressure, not a big deal. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is this little plant here. This plant has died due to a seedling disease. It can be quite a number of soybean seedling diseases that are present. We do see that the bottom of this plant has some black fruiting bodies, which are very telltale sign of that disease. These are called microsclerotia, and depending on being able to take this back to the lab, having a good detailed look at it can tell us what disease that this could be. But some of these soybean seedling diseases, we see some like Phytophthora, Pythium, Rhizoctonia. We see various amounts of diseases that can cause a soybean seedling to kind of start to develop and then kind of terminate itself and kind of wilt back. If you had really thin stands, this could be an issue, but you see, actually walking through this field, I didn't actually notice that until we got down here in the canopy that this plant was here. So while we don't want to see a lot of these, this could be an indication that we need to look at our seed treatment, really need to maybe think about a longer crop rotation with these within this field. But this is something to kind of notice and take stock of. But from a this year perspective, this is probably not going to be yield limiting. The next time we see, you probably will start to see some flowers start popping out of these soybean plants. And that's really when we turn the corner, if you will, on a lot of our management decisions. Still right now, we have a lot of herbicides on the table. We've just passed the first of the year, so things like dicamba are kind of off the table, but we do see that we don't have any flowers on here, so we can go through with a Roundup. We have some other more traditional options. As we go in and we start actually adding flowers, a lot of our herbicides start coming or start becoming off-label if you go through and making applications. Not all of them. We still have some later season options. But what we do end up picking up is having to focus a lot more on insects and other diseases. And kind of being down here, I have seen some caterpillar activity. I have seen some looper activity. And so it's one of those things that as we start moving from our vegetative growth to focusing more on reproductive growth, we want to make sure that we're securing and having these plants as safe as we possible to kind of move towards that back end of the season.